Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing today? It's your host, the Yodelorian, and today we're going to be discussing The Mandalorian Episode 1, which just premiered today on Disney+. It's November 12th. Now I'm going to give you a rundown of what I liked throughout the show, and overall just general impressions. So let's jump right into it. So the introduction to our story was very cool. Started out on this ice planet in a pub, and we're introduced to our Mandalorian character in quite a cool and chilling way, as he has to fight a bunch of thugs who are questioning him over his appearance in this general location. It was very cool when we get introduced to the concept of the Beskar steel, and then also the first words that our protagonist says are, "I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold." Now, I don't know about you, but that's a pretty badass thing to say, especially for the introduction of a character. As we're moving along, too, we also get introduced to a bounty puck, which is what the Mandalorian used to show that blue species, which was his reasoning for being at that pub in the first place. I thought this was pretty cool, and I can't wait to see where it goes in terms of what can be on a bounty puck as well as how that goes. The next scene that we see with our Mandalorian is pretty cool. It's him attempting to find his ship, which we later find out to be the Razor Crest. Now, while he's trying to purchase transport to go and see his ship, he's presented initially with a droid, to which he responds that he does not like droids and that he wants a person. Now, I think this is very interesting because, one, why doesn't he like droids? And I feel like that's something we're going to have to figure out later on when the show progresses. I also thought it was smart because, let's say the droid were to take him somewhere desolate and he was stranded and stuck there until he froze to death, and then they come along and scoop him up and they take his gear. So it's pretty smart for him to do and ask for a person, whereas if he's with a droid, he's really left to his own devices. Smart move on the Mandalorian there. As we're introduced to the Razor Crest, we see this magnificent ship. It was very modest in proportion, but very beautiful on the outside. The inside was just exquisite. Some good leather in there, or whatever type of material it was. Very beautiful. It was also pretty cool to see the Mandalorian cool, calm, and collected in terms of defeating that ice creature so that his ship could take off. It's always nice to see that killer instinct. And it really shows that, he is a Mandalorian. He was acting like it. So as we're on the ship and we're flying to where he needs to collect the bounties, we get to see the carbonate chambers he has on his ship. Now, this was very cool to see all the different bounties he had in carbonation, all in the sheets along the wall. I thought this was very cool. And then when the blue man turned around and he was right there and just froze him, stone cold killer, he was about his mission. And I think that was pretty cool because he's a nonsensical type of guy. He's out for the bounty and that's about it. Once he goes to deliver the bounty, I thought that was also very interesting because we're introduced to credit variations. Typically, in a lot of video games involving Star Wars or other things, you just have one set of credits that you're given. Whereas here we saw, I believe, 3 different types of credits or forms of currency which they were using, which is pretty cool to see. Also, we see a woman at 10 minutes 48 seconds as well as 12 minutes, and she's got red armor on. She has blonde hair, but her armor was pretty cool because it kind of reminded me of the armor he has, so maybe she's a bounty hunter and we'll see her later. But I thought her introduction was pretty cool because she kind of stood out a little bit, so hopefully we can see more of this character because definitely stylistically pretty cool character. We then follow the Mandalorian as he goes to a location to receive a new bounty. Inside of this location, he is greeted by what appears to be 4 different stormtroopers. And the interesting thing about this is they all appear to have different body shapes and sizes. So I don't really know if they were stormtroopers or if they had taken stormtrooper armor, let's say after the war or something, because they seem to be of different varying sizes and they just didn't seem to fit the bill of a stormtrooper. This is where our protagonist, the Mandalorian, is then given a new bounty that is undisclosed. He's the only one in the guild receiving this bounty, and it's very specific on the terms of his agreement capturing this specimen, age 50, kill if he has to, but to bring it back. And his prize will be Beskar steel, which appears to be a very popular steel that the Mandalorian likes. We then find out that the Mandalorian is one of many, and by this I mean we are introduced to the Mandalorian tribe, or at least the ones present on this particular planet that we're at. It's very cool to see him walk through a tunnel with Mandalorian on both sides in different armor, different colors of armor, one that appears to look like Boba Fett. That was a cool shout out to the original trilogy. And then we're introduced to the blacksmith, who appears to be making all of the armor for the Mandalorian tribes at the cost of of currency. Now this was cool because we see the Mandalorian, who has not been named to this point, walk in. A cool greeting is displayed between the Mandalorian and the female Mandalorian blacksmith in exchange of credits as well as Beskar steel that he received as premature payment for the bounty of which he is going to attempt to complete. The blacksmith then looks surprised and is very proud to see that the Beskar seal is back into the hands of the Mandalorians. She goes over to her workbench, sets it on the hot plate to smith down, and we see that while working with the Beskar steel, she goes to her workbench and grabs a set of tools made of Beskar. And this was just cool to see her use Beskar steel tools of the highest quality in working with Beskar steel. So that was very interesting to see. She smiths the Mandalorian an armor piece for his shoulder, clips it on, installs it, and it looked very cool. It seemed to match his helmet. That begs the question, is his helmet made of Beskar steel as well as the new shoulder piece, and he's trying to acquire more to complete the outfit? Is the rest of the steel on his body Beskar? These are things we do not know yet. It could be implied that his whole suit is Beskar steel except for that, but we're just going to have to wait and find out. We also learned that the Mandalorian was a foundling, and it appears that he had a family as a child and was found by the Mandalorians after an incident which occurred where you see his home village being massacred. Now it begs the question, could this have been done by droids, and is that why he doesn't like droids? Or there's a potential that it even was done by Mandalorians, and maybe they took him under their wing, and that's how they recruit. These are just some interesting things to think about, especially moving forward, because if it was Mandalorians, it could have vast implications on how he views the Mandalorians. Is he actually a Mandalorian? Is that how they recruit members? And I can't wait to see where this goes in the future. Overall, that scene was a nice touch at introducing us to Mandalorians in general. We then follow our main protagonist as he heads to a desert-like planet in search of the bounty. We are introduced to blurgs, which are these cute little monsters, kind of like horses and pigs combined, and oxen, and just aliens. So it was pretty funny to see, actually, as well as Quill. Now, this man is a hermit, and he's got a pretty cool saying. Every time he speaks, he goes, "I have spoken," then turns away as if the conversation is done. I think that's pretty funny, and Star Wars always seems to bring comedy in, so that was a nice little nod. The hermit teaches our Mandalorian how to ride the blurgs, as well as leads him in the direction of where to find the bounty. The bounty appears to be hidden away in this location, which is guarded by the species which appears similar to the kind that Jabba the Hutt had, protecting his outlook back in Episode 6. As the Mandalorian looks from above in terms of scouting and trying to figure out how he can get in and take out the enemies, we are introduced to IG-11, an assassin droid, who just walks straight into the enemy encampment and then just starts shooting and saying, "Give me the bounty." It was actually pretty funny to see. He was very accurate, highly deadly, and he was funnier than I thought he was going to be. I thought he would be more maniacal or cutthroat, but there was a lot of comedy in there. Seeing the chaos unfold, the Mandalorian goes in and starts to team up with the IG unit. The IG unit also claims that the bounty is his, and as a member of the Bondsman Guild, the Mandalorian must respect his claim to the bounty, of which the Mandalorian replies, "You have not captured it yet." And so they decide that they're going to split the prize money of the bounty. Now this starts to raise questions for me, as in, what is the Bondsman Guild? What are the rules associated with the Bondsman Guild? And also, I can't wait to see which other bounty hunters are members of the Bondsman Guild. I think this is a cool little concept to tie in how even in a world of disorder, there is also order and groups which work together. Now the IG-11 unit kind of cracked me up when he started saying that he needed to self-destruct because they were trapped. I thought this was pretty weird because he appeared to just walk right into the encampment, start shooting everybody. Blaster fire was being deflected and wasn't doing any damage to him whatsoever. So I thought it was weird that after just a small situation involving some adversity that he would want to self-destruct. There was also one point where throughout the back and forth of "I'm going to self-destruct" and then the Mandalorian telling him not to self-destruct, where they brought out this big, huge cannon blaster. And when they initially rounded the corner, you could see that the box was actually open on IG-11's chest with the thermal detonator there. All somebody had to do was shoot one blaster, and it would have blown up the IG-11 unit as well as our Mandalorian, because the thermal detonator was fully exposed. Whereas in all other scenes, he would close the thermal detonator before he would around the corner and fight with the Mandalorian. So I don't know if this was intentional or not, but I just thought that that was like, oh boy, one blaster fire and he's done for. And this brings us to an awesome scene when the Mandalorian uses his brain and use some of the tools on his wrist to take control of the blaster cannon. He hops on and then just starts shooting, and he eliminates everyone. I thought this was pretty cool. It showed confidence, poise, and just a killer instinct by our protagonist. Then there was a comical scene in which they're like, okay, how do we open the door to get to the bounty? And this was pretty funny because they slow-mo turn towards the camera in the direction of the cannon blaster, and then they hop on and shoot out an outline in the wall and go in. This is another part that I found was a little interesting. They knew that who they were looking for was on the other side of the wall, yet the first person they encountered the Mandalorian shot, and that could have been who they were looking for. So had that been who they were looking for, he would have only gotten the reward for killing the bounty as opposed to bringing them in. We then see not a single other organism in the room, but instead a crib-like object floating in the distance. The Mandalorian and IG-11 walk over, and we see those oh-so-familiar ears peek out under the blanket, and it is none other than a baby Yoda species, or as I'm going to call him, the Yodalorian. And the only other time we've ever seen species of Yoda's kind is Yoda and then Yaddle from Star Wars Episode 1. So to see this was simply mind-boggling. I was not expecting this at all because I remember that there was something in a Star Wars fandom about how George Lucas was very specific on how he would introduce the species and the kind of homeworld that Yoda is from. This has never been discussed before. So to see this baby Yodel, the Yodalorian, it just put me over the edge. The Mandalorian was surprised to see that this, what appeared to be an infant, was 50 years of age, to which IG-11 told him that many species have different aging and different lifespans. IG-11 then says that he was ordered to kill, attempts to pull his blaster before the Mandalorian shoots IG-11 through the head on both sides. Now I thought this scene was very interesting because IG-11 had been shot point blank numerous times, even by the blaster cannon, yet one blaster bolt from the Mandalorian's pistol was all that it took. The episode then ends with a nice and endearing finger point touch between the Mandalorian and the Yodalorian. All in all, this episode was fantastic. The production was excellent. The music was very nice and subtle, with hints of Western classics in there. All in all, I was very impressed with this episode and can't wait for more of them. Stay tuned as I will post updates and recaps and discussions after every issue. This has been the Yodalorian, Episode 1. Thank you for listening.